Hi there, I'm Ellen, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the creative gap, what it is, why it happens, how it can lead to feelings of disappointment, and how to overcome those feelings. So what exactly is the creative gap? I define the creative gap as the gap between where your creative work is right now and where you want it to be. And in this video, I'm going to address the creative gap from two different angles. One is how your creative work performs in terms of the quantitative metrics. So how much money the creative work makes, or how many followers or subscribers or how many views the creative work gets. And then the other angle I'm going to talk about is the artistic angle. So how your creative work feels and looks like from an artistic standpoint and artistic standard. So why does the creative gap actually happen? There's two main reasons for this. One is we live in a world where it's very easy to see and access other people's creative work. Especially in the age of social media, it's very easy to go online and see other people's art, other people's videos, what other people are doing artistically and creatively. And it gives us a certain idea of what our creative work needs to be and what is the difference between really great creative work and creative work that isn't so great. The other thing that happens is when we are trying to do something creative, we may go into it already having an idea in our mind or vision in our mind about what this creative work needs to look like. And so when we create something that doesn't meet that standard or that vision, it can be really disappointing. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about how to overcome the feelings of disappointment, frustration, and even sadness that can happen when you know that your work isn't where you want it to be. So one thing to keep in mind is to not let comparison limit you. Oftentimes, we can look at other people's creative work, how it's performing, the views it's getting, the subscribers somebody has, and it can make us feel like we're inferior and like our work isn't good enough. So it's really easy to compare our creative work to other people's creative work, but you have to remind yourself that you don't know what the other person has been through. You don't know all of the time, the years that they've dedicated to their craft to get to that level. You don't know the circumstances of that person. If you're someone who makes videos, maybe they went to film school, right? Maybe they did an internship or worked for a film company before they started doing content online. You have no idea, right? So it's not fair to yourself to start to compare yourself and your own journey to somebody else's. You have to remember that this is your journey. Sometimes there can be thoughts like, oh, well, this person is already doing this, or this person's doing it so well. Like, what is the point of me doing it? And I have to say that that mindset can definitely limit you when it comes to being creative, because you have to remind yourself that even if someone has done something similar, whether they're in a similar niche or they're doing a similar method of art as you, it's never going to be exactly the same, because you're going to bring your own energy, your own perspective, your own authenticity to it, and that's going to make it unique and different. So even if someone's already doing it, it doesn't mean that you can't either. Remember that you're still early in the process, especially if you are just beginning, or even if you've been doing it for a while. Just know that there's always room to grow and improve. It's not fair to compare yourself to people who've been doing this for years. Just know that as long as you keep going and you keep creating and learning from what you're doing, you're gonna get there. Remember that great things take time. Great relationships take time to build, and you have to think of it like this is your relationship to your art, and a great relationship with your art can take time to build. There's a lot of trust that goes into this, there's a lot of dedication and a lot of commitment. So give yourself time to really build this relationship with your art. Learn how to be more open and trusting, know how to be more gentle and attentive to your creative process. You might look at someone in your industry and think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to be like them? But you have to remind yourself that you're at a completely different stage, especially if you're just starting out, right? You can't compare someone who is literally just starting to learn math to someone who has a PhD in the subject. They're completely different stages. And so remember to be patient with yourself, to be kind with yourself. If you're feeling disappointed about the creative gap, remind yourself that it's all about the way that you look at the creative gap. So you could look at the gap between where you are and where you want to be and let it disappoint you, or you can let it motivate you and inspire you to keep creating and keep learning so that you can keep getting better and get where you want to go. Which one of those sounds more constructive and healthier to think about? If you let your creative process be so dictated by disappointment and frustration, it's going to be really stifling, overwhelming, and you're not going to be really wanting to create more. Versus if you let the gap inspire you, motivate you to be better, and then it's gonna let you create more, push you to want to do more. Let the creative gap be fuel for your journey versus a roadblock. Something that has really helped me in my own creative journey is recognizing that I'm already good enough as I am. And what I mean by this is oftentimes we may look at other artists and think, oh my gosh, well, my skill level isn't there, I don't have the right equipment, I'm just not like them. And what I want to say to that is the way that you make your art right now, there's already value in it, and you might not see it, but there's value in your own learning and growth process. But there's also people out there who already will probably appreciate you and your work as you are right now, and they need this version of you right now. An example of this is one of my favorite YouTubers right now has over 500,000 subscribers. He's really big on YouTube right now. He was still like pretty popular when I found him. He was around at 100,000 subscribers, but he's really grown a lot over the past few years. And his videos now are very high production quality. He has great equipment, he has a team now, but I think about how some of my favorite videos of his were videos that he did years ago when it was just him in his room, him talking to his camera, super simple. And maybe he, as a creator, looks back at those videos and think, oh man, those videos are cringe, or they're just not good enough. Whereas someone like me, who's the viewer, I love those videos because they feel so raw and authentic to me, and I just love the simplicity and the beauty of that. And so you might be thinking, oh, I need to have the fancy equipment, or I need to have the like color grading, or you might think that you might have to be at a certain level in order to be valuable, in order to make good creative work. But that's not necessarily the case, because creative work at its essence is highly subjective. We might have our own opinions about how good the creative work is, but really creative work is so much about the person who also receives the work. To do this, you have to let your work be seen by other people, and I know it can be really scary sometimes, and you might not feel like your creative work is good enough, but you have to put it out there and let other people engage with it, let other people see it, let other people decide for themselves how they feel about your art. There are people who need to see this version of you and your art. Trust in that. You are already good enough. It's really easy to get into the mindset of measuring creative work based on the numbers or how it looks, but what I want to offer you is thinking about whether or not you actually honored the idea and measuring it based on whether you actually took action and followed through. In her book, Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about ideas as their own entities and how ideas come to us because they want to be birthed through us. So instead of measuring whether or not something got a certain amount of views or follows or subscribers, measure if you actually took action on the inspiration that you received. Measure if you actually honored the idea. If you are a creative person and you are very goal-oriented and you're very driven, you'll probably always be growing and evolving, and there's always going to be something that you want to do to improve your work and your creative process. So the gap most likely will always be there to some extent. And I know this can be hard to hear, but instead of letting that disappoint you or make you sad, you can also see it as an opportunity for you to make peace with the fact that this gap is going to be there, and it's really about how you respond to it and how you view it in your life. So that's why instead of always having to hit certain milestones, think about the acts of the creative process itself and finding joy in that and allowing yourself to appreciate the fact that you get to be alive and create things, and that is fun and it is beautiful, and you can always learn, keep growing, and get better. I hope the next time that you get an idea, I hope that you honor the idea and create it and make it into reality. My channel is about personal growth and spirituality. If those topics interest you, then definitely subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.